So, Dr. Khan. Hello, can you hear me?
Actually, sir, Khan sir is not there.
Acha, okay, okay. So, when should I start?
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, good evening.
Sir. So, sir, please start.
Okay, so good evening to all of you. So yesterday what I did actually, I was discussing about the Klein-Gordon equations. You know, the Klein-Gordon equations, as I have been repeatedly saying, that is a classical field equation for scalar particles. Particles which will have spins, it is a scalar field. So if you quantize that field, you will get particles which will have zero spin, right? And that Lagrangian we have derived in our earlier phase of the lecture, where we have just used the transformation properties of the scalar functions under the Lorentz transformation and got that Lagrangian. From that Lagrangian, we derived the Euler-Lagrange equations by minimizing the action, and then we have discussed in detail about the Klein-Gordon equations. We have quantized that also in the first phase of the lecture. And also what we have done, we have applied the Noether's theorem to derive the conserved currents. Noether theorem says that if you change the function phi, and then because of that change, if your action remains unchanged, then for that kind of change, there must be some conserved quantity. Like if you make a global phase transformation to the scalar field, and if your action remains unchanged because of that global phase transformation, then your total charge of the system will remain conserved. That I have shown explicitly. And the charge density expression, this rho, I have been saying repeatedly, this is the expression for the rho. Now, this is a way of, this is a better, according to me, is the better way of driving the Klein-Gordon equations. Normally, just I am recapitulating what I have done yesterday, because somebody said that I was a little fast. Just a little bit recapitulate and go to today's lecture. But in normally most of the books, what they do, they use the Einstein's energy momentum relations, E square equal to P square plus M square, because C is 1, so otherwise it should have been P square C square plus M square C4. Then you replace this, use the prescription of the quantum mechanics, you replace E by d dt, and then momentum P by the gradient, spatial gradient. If you do that, then and manipulate, you then get a Klein-Gordon equation, which is del square del t square phi minus del square phi minus m square phi equal to 0. If you take the complex conjugate of that equation, you get just del square phi star del t square del square phi star minus m square phi star equal to 0. Now, if we multiply the first equation by phi star and the second equation by phi, and then subtract, you will see that the mass term will get cancelled, and a little manipulation will give you a equation del t partial derivative of this particular quantity with respect to time is the divergence of this quantity. So this quantity which is under the time derivative, if you call it rho, the density, and this what is under the divergence, if you call that j, then you get a continuity equation del rho del t plus divergence of j is equal to 0. This is very similar to the continuity equations which you have studied in your classical electrodynamics course, which says that, which states the conservation of charge. How? Because if you say suppose this divergence of J, you can you use the divergence theorem and write down Gauss theorem and write this divergence of J as a what you do, you just take the volume integral over this. So if you take the volume integral over rho, then the J density will become the total charge, and then this divergence, use the divergence theorem to convert this volume integral of this divergent quantity to surface integral. So this will be dt of volume integral of rho plus is surface integral over J dot ds, right? So whatever, the whatever is enclosed within that volume V, right? Any change of the charge with respect to time will be decided by what is going out and coming in through that surface, which is appearing here in this particular integral. And that's whatever change within the volume will take place will certainly be controlled by the charges which are flowing out or in through that surface which is enclosing that volume. That is what is the conservation equation. So here also same thing is that probability conservations. This particular equation is stating that whatever probability density is changed within the volume will be decided by the flux of the particles which are going in or coming, going out or coming in through that surface which is enclosing the volume. So this is again a continuity equations, right? Now this equation will have a solution of the phi is e to the minus I et plus I p dot x. If you, and so you can, from there you can calculate the phi star and calculate the rho. If you calculate rho, you will see that rho is coming as, it will be proportional to energy 2En square, where n is the normalization constant appearing in the as a normalization constant appearing in the in the solutions of that particular equations in phi. So when you this rho is proportional to E, and the energy momentum relations, Einstein energy momentum relations, E square is equal to P square plus M square. Now E can have positive or negative values, so your rho will become negative, right? So you have a chance here that where probability density may become negative, because in energy negative values of the energy is admitted through these relations. Once you admit the negative energy value, your probability density will become negative. That is unacceptable. Probability density can never be negative. It should remain between 0 to 1. And then yesterday I have discussed there are attempt to multiply this density rho by electric charge, which can be either positive or negative. So if you multiply this by electric charge and then say that the rho is my charge density, which can be either positive or negative, then this negative density problem may be solved partially but not entirely, because then this equation will not be able to describe neutral particle which doesn't have any charge, right? This is very clear from here. Other prescription is that probably what you can do, you have both positive energy and negative energy solution. What you can argue is that I will neglect the negative energy solution, but that also you cannot do, because if you neglect the negative energy solutions, then the computational relations you will lose, which is essential in quantum mechanics. So these are the two problems which we had. Probability density is negative because energy is negative, and then the Dirac equation came into the picture. Now the energy momentum relation is E is equal to P square plus M square. If you expand this in power of P, then what will happen is that you will have an infinite number of power of P. And when you use the quantum mechanical prescription to write down the wave equations, E will replace by dE dt, and P will replace by the spatial gradient. But then P will have all kinds of power, so you will have infinite orders of derivatives with respect to space. So the time derivative and the space derivative, or the time and space coordinate, will be very different footing in such equations, apart from the fact that it will be impossible to solve such equations, right? But space and time will not be in the same footing. To put space and time in the same footing, so what Dirac did, he linearized this Hamiltonian, and he said this H can be written as alpha dot P plus beta M. So if you linearize in this fashion, then H you can put the partial del T and P will come as a partial gradient, so that it will be first order equations with first order derivatives in time and spatial coordinates. Space and time will be in the same footing. You will get the Dirac equations. Okay, and that Dirac equation, we have done all the algebra and shown you that Dirac equations. I'll just briefly mention that it will solve the negative probability density problem. Now, one more thing which I said is, if you write H in this pattern alpha dot P plus beta m, then H square energy square should be equal to P square plus m square again. So then if I take the square of this operator, then I should get back the Klein-Gordon equation. So if you take H equal to alpha dot P plus beta m, and then you get the differential equation like this. But you can also argue that if I operate H again in this equation, I should get back the Klein-Gordon equations, right? If you now if you want to get back the Klein-Gordon equation, then you have to put certain constraint all on these quantities alpha and beta, and that will show you that alpha and beta, they are not the ordinary numbers, they must be matrices. And yesterday we have argued that these matrices should be at least 4 by 4 order matrices. And this alpha, as I said, is a matrix, beta is also a matrix, and this alpha, you can write, there are two kinds of representations. One is given by Dirac and Pauli, where this alpha is 0, sigma 0. You see, this sigma is the Pauli matrices, 2 by 2 matrices. This null matrix is also 2 by 2. Beta is another matrix, which is I 0. This is unit matrix, again 2 by 2 unit matrix. So alpha and beta, they are actually 4 by 4 matrices, though it is written in a compact form like 2 by 2. This is one representation. Another representation is the Weyl representation. So alpha is given as minus sigma 0, 0 sigma, and beta is I 0, I 0. Both the either one of the representations you can use, and but you should be consistent with working with the same representation, so you get a consistent result. Okay, now this alpha and beta, they are also as I said, they are matrices. Now this Dirac equations which I have got there on the last page I have shown you, this is the Dirac equation. What you can do, you can multiply this equation from left by beta. You should be careful whether you are multiplying from left or right, because beta is a matrix now. Now if you do that, then this is the equation you get, and this normally this beta is defined as gamma 0 and beta alpha as a as gamma vector kind of thing. So beta and beta alpha forms a 4 vector kind of quantity, which is gamma mu. Temporal component is beta, and beta alpha is the special analogous to the spatial component. So this gamma mu vector you also know, because you know beta and alpha. In both the representations you can calculate gamma. This, why I am doing this, we are describing the Dirac equations, but when I will quantize the Dirac equations and go to the quantum field theory, these algebras will be required when you will be calculating the cross sections. That is the main purpose of discussing this about these matrices and all that. Without this, you will not be able to calculate any cross section, right? So this is, it may look a bit mathematical, but we should get used to it. Okay. And then I have shown you yesterday, in terms of gamma, the Dirac equation takes a very compact form, like I gamma mu del mu minus m psi equal to 0. Okay. Now these gammas, as I said, alpha beta I know, so I also know the gamma, and gamma will satisfy various relations, like gamma 0 square, which is beta, should be equal to 1, gamma I square is equal to -1, gamma nu anti-commutator should be 2 g mu nu, where g mu nu I had defined earlier. This is the metric tensor, and from there I can also derive define a quantity gamma 5, I gamma 0, gamma 1, gamma 2, gamma 3, gamma 5. This gamma 5 will also be very useful. Dirac equations ultimately will see that it will give you a equation which will describe spin half particles, right? Now so Dirac equation should also be useful for describing the motion of neutrinos, and when in neutrino kind of interactions, this gamma 5 will appear. So what I am now doing it is that we are giving all the required quantities and algebras to make you ready so that you will be able to calculate the cross sections involving electrons or the neutrino. This gamma 5 will be very much required when you will consider the neutrino interactions. We'll show you later. Okay. Now this from the Dirac equations, again I can get a conservation equations like I did for the Klein-Gordon equations. Again you can take the complex conjugate of this equation, but you should remember that this gamma mu is a matrix, so psi is also a matrix, right? So and this psi matrix structure of the psi is called the spinor. So this equation, when you take the complex conjugate, you should be careful because now you have to take the Hermitian conjugate of these equations. So you know how to take the Hermitian conjugate. If you have you have taken the dagger of product AB, you know this, that becomes B dagger A dagger. Same formula if you apply here, then you will be able to get a differential equation satisfied by the psi dagger. But what we do, we don't get the equation for psi dagger. We multiply the psi dagger from right by the gamma 0, which I have defined, and then you get a equation for psi bar, where psi bar is psi dagger gamma 0. So we don't get the equation for psi dagger, we get the equation for psi bar. Just for psi dagger also you can have equation, but just multiply that from right by gamma 0 and define a quantity psi bar and get the differential equation for psi bar, and this A is the equation for psi bar. Now you may again say, why psi bar, why not psi dagger? I'll tell you again when we'll go to the interactions. Okay, so this is the equation for psi bar, equivalently psi dagger, and this is for psi. Again, as you did for the Klein-Gordon equation, you multiply this by psi, and this one is by psi dagger from the left, and then add them together, and you will see that you will get equation del mu psi bar gamma mu psi equal to 0. Right? This gamma mu, as you know, is nothing to worry. This gamma mu I have written in terms of beta and beta alpha, and beta alpha you know, so you know the gamma mu. So del mu psi bar gamma mu equal to 0. This is again a continuity equations, like like the charge conservation, like del mu j mu equal to 0. I can write like this mu equal to 0 will give me the temporal component, so del t of some quantity will be divergence of j again equal to 0. Again this is a conservation equation, and this j mu is the current psi bar gamma mu psi. Right? Now let us calculate rho, the probability density, which we calculated for the Klein-Gordon equation. This rho equal to psi dagger psi, and psi is a 4 vector column vector with 4 psi components, psi 1, psi 2, psi 3, psi 4. If you and psi dagger will be just this row matrix with component psi 1 star, etc. Rho will be nothing but a psi mod psi 1 square plus psi 2 square plus psi 3 square plus psi 4 square. And if it is a mod square of the sum of the square of the sum of the mod square, this will always be positive. So the quantity rho probability density, which was negative in the Klein-Gordon equation, is now has become positive. So the negative probability density problem has been solved by Dirac. But now there is another problem. What is negative energy solutions, which will again be there, but then Dirac has solved this problem in a very clever way. That psi solution of the Dirac equation psi I can write as up to the minus ip dot x, and psi vp equal to plus ip dot x. Right? So this is the negative energy solution, and this is the positive energy solution. Here minus appearing, here it is plus. So here you have also negative energy solutions. But this negative energy solution Dirac has solved by invoking the Pauli's exclusion principle. What he says is that all the negative energy states, right, they are filled up by the electrons. So you have infinite number of negative energy states, and you have filled that up by infinite number of electrons. Okay, and since you have all these negative energy states are filled up, no other electron from the positive energy states can jump and go to the negative energy states, because Pauli exclusion principle, because of the Pauli exclusion principle, any entry is blocked, because Pauli exclusion principle will not allow any electron from there to go there. Okay, so but so by that he has solved the saved the solutions of his equations, But the problem here is that the Hamiltonian which I have written down, the H is equal to alpha dot P plus beta M, that is for a single electron or single particle, right? Now, the solution, when you want to interpret the solutions or to save the negative energy solutions, what you need is an infinite number of particles, right? Infinite number of electrons, let us say, which is not acceptable. So Dirac equation has also some problem, and that will force us to quantize the Dirac equations, and that will bring to the quantum electrodynamics, which will come later. So this is something which is unsatisfactory with the Dirac equations. So we have to find a solution, and that's all. That it will be completely solved once you quantize the Dirac equation. Okay. Now, negative energy solutions, as you know, this I have calculated this J mu, which was just is given by this. This is J mu is a 4-vector. Temporal component is energy, and the 3 momentum is P, right? So suppose for an electron, I want to calculate the current, J mu 4 current. So I will multiply by minus E because electron has a negative charge. So this current is minus E 2n square EP, right? For the electron. Now suppose I want to calculate the current for the positron, I'll just replace that minus E by E, right? But what I can do, this positron current, I can take a minus sign here and multiply again this E and P by minus 1. So now you see the positron current is similar to the electric current. Here it is minus E, here it is minus E. But the positron current is same as electron current with energy and momentum negative values. So positron current is same as electron current with negative energy, right? So negative energy solutions can be treated as a particle which has the same properties as electron, but the charge is positive. So that is the so that particle must be the antiparticle of the electron, which is positron. Okay, so that's the interpretation of the negative energy solution. If you take, then your problem is solved. We will see this in quantum field theory more clearly. Now you can also see this in a different way. The positive energy solution is given by e to the minus IET. You see, just go back here. This solution is e to the minus IET, right? E to the minus IET. So what I can do, I can replace this E by minus E and T by minus T without changing anything. Now, when I change the sign of E, I am forced to change the sign of T also, right? Right. So now, what I can say that the negative energy particles, as if the negative energy solutions, negative energy particles will be going backward in time, right? This is something which we will be again using while drawing the Feynman diagrams when you will do the quantum field theory. So this is what we have discussed yesterday. Now just this is all we have discussed yesterday. So I think this part will be okay. Now I will be going to there are some problem yesterday that somebody said that I was a bit fast, but I think today I could explain that. And now today I am going to I'm going to describe now going to solve the Dirac equations. But one important thing I must always mention to you is that that Dirac equations, if you consider the Dirac equation and put the particle at rest. So what you do, you have the Dirac equation like I gamma mu del mu minus m psi equal to 0. You put that psi in the Dirac equations, you will get an equation which is gamma mu p mu minus m u p equal to 0. And then when the particle is at rest, then p0, which is just the energy of the particle for free particle, then you will see that gamma 0 minus 1 into u equal to 0. Now if you consider this u as a column vector with 4 component, then by solving this particular equation by putting the gamma 0 value, gamma 0 I have is a matrix and I have given you the value, and this one is just a unit matrix, 4 by 4 unit matrix, right? If you put this, solve this equation, you will see that out of the four components of this U, 2 will be 0. That is indicating that when the electron is at rest, it has 2 degrees of freedom, and that we'll see will correspond to spin up and spin down. Okay. Now let me just try to give some kind of solution to your Dirac equations. Now let me go to the Dirac equation today. Okay. Now the Dirac equations, as you know, we have written yesterday, and I am just repeating this. H is alpha dot p plus beta m. Alpha, beta, everything we know in both the representations, in Dirac-Pauli representation as well as in the Weyl representations. First, let us solve these equations in Dirac-Pauli representations. What will happen what I mean by Dirac-Pauli representations? This alpha and beta value, which I will take here, the matrix expression for alpha and beta, I'll take for Dirac representation, which I have mentioned yesterday, and today also I have briefly mentioned. Right. So this is the Dirac equation, alpha dot p plus beta m into U equal to energy times U, and the beta I know, right? So I just first solve the equation for p equal to 0. I mean the momentum equal to 0. That is means the particle is at rest. When the particle is at rest, then you know that what will happen here, it will come like this alpha dot p term will vanish, because p is the 3 momentum here. If it is rest, this term will go. So beta mu equal to EU. But what I am saying is that, let's say when the particle is at rest, then beta mu is equal to lambda u. This is the eigenvalue equations, and I am calling the eigenvalue of that equation is lambda. Now beta in Dirac-Pauli matrices, I have given you, this is the value I0, 0 minus I. Now put this beta here, and you know very well how to solve this eigenvalue problem. What you will see, you will get this 4 values of this lambda, right? Because this as I am saying, that this beta is actually a 4 by 4 matrix. I is a 2 by 2 unit matrix, so this is a 4 by 4 matrix. So when you solve this eigenvalue equations, you will get 4 eigenvalues, and the 4 eigenvalues will be of lambda will be plus m, minus m, minus m. So see very clearly, I have 2 eigenvalues with positive energy. Mass and energy is equivalent. The particle is, when particle is at rest, then the rest mass is its energy itself. So I have 2 solutions with, you know, positive energy, and 2 solutions with the negative energy. And you'll see that 2 positive energy solution plus m will correspond to positive energy solutions or for electron with spin up and spin down, right? So this lambda equal to plus m and plus m is the solution for the electron which is at rest, corresponding to spin up and spin down. Similarly, minus m, we will see these are the solutions, negative energy solutions with spin up and spin down. And again, you know how to calculate the eigenvectors for this particular equation. You'll get the minus eigenvectors as 1, 0, 0, 0, this, and this. These are the 4 eigenvectors you will get, right? So this clearly tells you that this pi naught should be a column vector with 4 components, and this equation gives you 4 eigenvalues, right? 2 with positive energy and 2 with negative energy, and this 2 positive energy will be corresponding to spin up, spin down, and so on. Okay. Now this is just to give you an idea of, you know, this gives you an idea that there will be, you know, 4 eigenvalues, and this will be a column vector. The solution. Now let us solve the equation for non-zero p when the particle is not at rest. So there, what you do is that alpha value for the Dirac-Pauli representation, you put the alpha and beta in these particular equations, and you get these particular equations. So this will be again please remember that this is a 4 by 4 4 by 4 matrix solve, because the sigma is a Pauli matrix which is 2 by 2, and this with this M there is a unit matrix which is 2 by 2. So this is a 4 by 4 equations, right? So this is a very simple equation. Again, you just do the matrix multiplications and you will get these two particular equations, and this will lead to UA. You see that UA I can take in the right hand side. So sigma dot PUB will be E minus M into UA. So UA will be this. Similarly, UB will be this. Now let us consider the solution for E greater than 0, right? That is the solution corresponding to lambda plus M and plus M. Okay. Now I can assume that UA is like a just call that UAS like kappa S, where this chi S, where this chi S is 1 0, and chi S has two values 1 and 2, and that we'll see later that 1 and 2 will 1 will correspond to the spin up and S equal to 2 will correspond to spin down, right? So UA equal to chi S with S equal to 1 and 2, spin up and spin down, right? And then you know the UA which is chi S. So you know in this U which was the total solution, this is UA, you have taken the chi S, and UB, just if you know the UA then you know the UB, right? So you know the solution solution for the E greater than 0. And of course you can put a normalization constant here. So where chi S is chi S is actually you know is 1 for S equal to 1 it is 1 0, for 2 it is 0 1. So this is this chi contains two component, and sigma dot B by E plus M, and chi S again can be 1 0 or 0 1, so two component. This is a then a column vectors with 4 components, right? Similarly, what you can do, you can solve for the other equations. UBS you can assume as chi S, and when you assume UBS as chi S, then if you know chi S, then you know UA, because sigma dot P E by M, this is known to you. Pauli matrix you know the momentum of particles, then you know the solution. This is very simple. So you know all the solutions of the 4 solutions of the Dirac equations, US, and which is chi S, chi S, and this chi S can take two values 1 and 2, sigma dot P by E plus M, again chi S, right? So this is a column vector, and again this UB I am just calling it, this is US for S equal to 1 and 2, and UB I am just calling US plus 2. So you have now U1, U2, and again U3, U4. These are the 4 solutions of the Dirac equations. Okay, so this is the equations which you solution which you get for the Dirac equations in Pauli Dirac representations. Okay, now I'll give you some physical intuitions. I mean, give some kind of intuitive approach of how the solution will look like if the electron is moving fast or slow. So this is the equation. We have P slash minus M UP equal to 0. This is the solution. This P slash is nothing but gamma mu P mu, which we have encountered here. You see, gamma mu P mu. Just shorthand notation is P slash, defined as gamma mu P mu. So this is the equations which you have got, right? Now suppose the gamma 0 is again this is the quantity beta, 1 0 0 minus 1, and gamma 5 I have defined today as it's I times gamma 0, gamma 1, gamma 2, gamma 3. If you multiply all those, then you get the expressions for gamma 5 also. Now this gamma mu P mu I can write at gamma 0 P 0 minus gamma dot P minus M UP equal to 0, right? Now suppose I take the particle which is moving very slowly, right? If you take the particle moving very slowly, that means if you put P tends to 0, then you will see 0 1 0 minus 1. This is coming from this matrix, and this U I have assumed as phi and chi. You will see that chi will be equal to 0. So out of the 4 component, when the particle is at rest, 2 will be equal to 0, right? Right. So this is something which is very important in the sense that means for a electron which is at rest, you have 2 degrees of freedom, and Dirac equation is clever enough to just reject out of 4 2 degrees of freedom. So it just retains the 2 physical degrees of freedom and projects out or rejects out the other 2 degrees of freedom. You know, in a physics, you will like Klein-Gordon equation also, you will see that Klein-Gordon equation is nothing but what it does in Fourier space. If you take the Fourier transform of the Klein-Gordon equation, you will realize that it will from the solution phi, it will only take the solutions which are on shell. All the off shell solutions will reject out. It will project out. So that's happens in Maxwell. In Procca equations also, and Maxwell equations. When we will discuss that, we'll see. Now, so when the particle is at rest, you see out of that this is a 4 component, as I am saying, but this phi has 2 component, chi has 2 component. Now this chi has come to 0. That means out of the 4, 2 has been projected out. Now let us consider now that the particle is moving very fast. The momentum of the particle or the kinetic energy of the particle much larger than the rest mass energy, right? If that is so, then what you can do in this Dirac equation, you can ignore the mass term, because I am assuming that the kinetic energy term is this momentum is much larger than the rest mass. So this will be the equation. Mass term is not there, right? Now this equation you can multiply from left by, let us say, gamma 5, right? Now I have already mentioned, you know, when you multiply this by gamma 5, then it becomes gamma 5 gamma mu p mu u equal to 0. Now I have already mentioned that gamma mu and gamma 5, they anti-commute. That means gamma mu gamma 5 is equal to minus gamma 5 gamma mu. So just gamma 5 gamma mu, I can write gamma mu gamma 5 p mu up equal to 0. And p is a kinematical variable, gamma 5 is a matrix, so I can take easily this gamma 5 there. So now what the equation which I am getting is gamma mu p mu gamma 5 up equal to 0. Now you compare this equation with this, gamma mu p mu u equal to 0 and gamma mu p mu gamma 5 u also 0. This tells me that if u is a solution of the Dirac equation, then gamma 5 u is also a solution of the Dirac equation. These concepts will be very much useful when you will study the neutrino physics. Okay, so if when that happens when the mass is 0, and you know that neutrino mass is very, that is neutrino oscillations and all that, and some neutrino species must have some non-zero mass, that is proved, and Nobel Prize was awarded for that. So neutrino mass is not exactly 0, but if for small mass, this approximation will be valid, that if u is a solution of the Dirac equation, then gamma 5 u is also a solution of the gamma equation, or of the Dirac equations. So this is something which is very important. Now what one does actually with this gamma 5, one can define a operator half 1 minus gamma 5, which is called PL, some projection operator, and PR, which is half 1 plus gamma 5. And remember that gamma 5 square equal to 1. That will come from the representation very well. So I have defined this PL half 1 minus gamma 5, and PR, another projection operator, half 1 plus gamma 5. Now you can check very easily that PL square will be equal to PL, that is the property of a projection operator. PR square will be PR, and PL PR projection product will be 0. And this psi, this vector, this Schrodinger equation, solution of the Schrodinger equation psi. Remember one thing: this psi is the solution of the Dirac equation. Psi is up into e to the minus ip dot x. Though we are working with u, but the solution is up to the minus ip dot x, right? But if you know u, you know psi, because this is just a multiplication by e to the minus p dot x, right? Now this the solution of the Dirac equation psi, I can write this as psi equal to half psi plus half psi, and then this is subtracted and added, right? This is what I have done. So I have written just psi equal to psi, nothing else. Now this half, I can take half common here, and then I say 1 minus gamma 5 psi plus half 1 plus gamma 5 psi. Now this, you know, it will be clear later. This half, so psi I can write like some psi L plus psi R, when psi L is half 1 minus gamma 5 psi and psi R is half 1 plus gamma 5 psi. Now this psi I can write in this part. So psi is written in terms of the left-handed and right-handed spinors, right? We'll come to this. These are very important quantities. Now this, you can see that if you operate gamma 5 on psi L, you'll see that half gamma 5 psi, just I have multiplied both sides by gamma 5, nothing else. Now half gamma 5 square is 1, I know, so this is 1. So this becomes minus half 1 minus gamma 5 psi. So if you operate gamma 5 on psi, you get minus. If you operate gamma 5 on psi, you get minus psi L. Here is a minus sign. I have missed that minus here. I should put it there. Okay. Similarly, you can show that gamma 5, if you operate on psi R, right-handed spinor, you get psi R, right? So gamma 5 operating on left-hand side of field will give you change in sign, but on gamma on right-hand side it will not give any change in sign. And then this Lagrangian, yesterday I have also mentioned that Dirac equations you can get by taking a Lagrangian like psi bar I gamma mu del mu minus m psi equal to 0, right? Now, you know, this psi I can write as a sum of psi L plus psi R, and similarly I can write psi bar equal to psi L bar plus psi R bar. If you do that, you will see the Lagrangian density for the Dirac equation will take this form. Note a very important point here. This is extremely important in the sense that, you know, this part you see you have psi L bar psi L, psi R bar psi R. So in the Dirac spinor, when you have the derivative term del mu, in that term you have psi L bar psi L, psi R bar psi R. There is no mixing of L and R. You see, it is L and L, R and R. There is no mixing of left-handed and right-handed psi, right? But very importantly, you see the mass term has a mixing of psi L bar psi R, psi R bar psi L. So mass term is mixing up the left-handed and right-handed fields. That is what it is doing. So this is a very, very important, it will have a very important consequence on the conservation of the handedness, right? If you will have mass term, then you will see that for those kind of, in that kind of system, the handedness will not be conserved because there will be a mixing of left and right hand, right? And the system where you have no mass, their left and right-handed will not be mixed up. So handedness will be conserved if you have massless system, and if you have massive system, then handedness will not conserve. And this handedness, we will see that this is nothing but the chirality. There is a Greek word called kairos, which means the hands, and chirality means handedness. So we'll show you that this mass term will be responsible for breaking down the conservation of handedness, or in other words, it will break down the conservation of chiral symmetry. Chiral symmetry will be breakdown. Chiral symmetry will not be restored if you have a mass, because mass is mixing up the left-handed and right-handed solutions. This is also extremely important concept which we will be using later. Okay. Now let me also tell you here that in this the Dirac Lagrangian which you have got here, just a passing comment that with that, for that Lagrangian you can again construct the action, and then from the action, by extremizing the action, you can get all the Dirac equations which I have discussed so far. Okay, that is very simple exercise, and I have in this particular note I have done this algebra. You can see later. Okay, Now the solution of the Dirac equations which I have done for the Dirac and Pauli representations, you can also solve these equations in terms of in the Weyl representations, which is also very useful at times when you have particles with zero mass, right, like neutrinos. Okay, so so now let us solve this equation for for in the Weyl representations. I'll solve that. What I mean by the Weyl representation, my gamma 0 is now different from the one which I have just discussed. Here, there the gamma 0, if I show you somewhere the gamma 0, it is certainly there. This is gamma 0, beta and gamma 0 is same. So this is Dirac-Pauli. Now the one which I am going to do, gamma 0 is this. So this is different. So it's just the matrices are different, nothing else. And this is a matrix equation, so you put some matrix and solve it. But you should be consistent whether you are putting Dirac-Pauli or Weyl representations. Okay. So now let us solve that equations. And here again I have, for your convenience, written down explicitly the representation of gamma 0 and gamma I, or alpha. This is alpha, and remember this gamma I is nothing but beta times alpha I. So this again equation I can solve with this. If I know gamma 0 and gamma I can solve this equation. And this gamma 5, gamma 5 again is defined like this. So this gamma 5 will be again different from the gamma 5 which you have for the Pauli-Dirac representations, because the gamma 0 is different and gamma i's are different. And gamma 5 have these properties. Gamma 5 square is gamma 5, gamma 5 dagger is gamma 5, and these are the relations I have already written. Okay. And out from this gamma 5, from these gammas, you can actually construct 16 independent quantities. One is, of course, one is 1, and this gamma mu, this has 4 components because mu equal to 0, 1, 2, 3. Then there will be antisymmetric tensor sigma mu nu, right? This will have 6 components. Then gamma mu gamma 5 will have 4 components, and gamma 5 has a single component. Total 16 independent 4 by 4 matrices you have here. So this 4 independent quantities you can use to write down the interactions and many other things which I will show you later. Just a passing comment as a question some of you can think of. You see that's L for the Dirac Lagrangian density for the Dirac equations I have written as psi bar I gamma mu del mu minus m psi equal to 0. Now you see, if you just just suppress this psi bar, then I mu gamma mu del mu minus m psi equal to 0. That is the Dirac equation. So if I put here in this LD the Dirac equation, like I gamma mu del mu minus m psi equal to 0 is the Dirac equation, then the Lagrangian becomes 0. Should I do that? This is the question you must think. And if you don't come up with the answer, let me know. Okay. This is a tricky thing. Sometimes people ask this kind of question. Okay. So now again let us solve the equations, Dirac equations in Weyl representations. Again, what I will do, I will solve the equation for momentum p equal to 0. That means when the particle is at rest. And when the particle is at rest, solving this equation is very simple. You know the gamma 0, here it is given. Gamma 0 it is given. So this is the equation. So you put the gamma 0 matrix and solve it. You will see that in this notation, what will happen? This phi chi, which is the Dirac spinor. Of course, again I am repeating, phi has 2 components and chi has 2 components. Okay, because this is a 4 by 4 matrix. So if you solve this equation, you will see that this will give you phi equal to chi equal to some zeta. So the solution U will be a column matrix. Root over m is given, but just for dimensional reason, no importance to that. And this zeta is simply this is the solution you are getting, because phi and chi both are zeta. So this U will be zeta with root m. Okay. Now this is the solution. Similarly, what you can do, so this is the solution for the when I say psi is up to the minus ip dot x. So this is the positive energy solution, because I have taken here minus ip dot x. And I have told you that this minus, when I take minus here, that is the positive energy solution. That is the convention used by Heisenberg, and that is going on. And then I can have also a solution where psi is Vp e to the I plus Ip dot x. See, here I have taken minus, I am taking here a plus. This is a negative energy solution we call. Okay, so again what I do, if I put this psi in the Dirac equation, I will get gamma mu p mu plus m v equal to 0. Now if I take the particle again at rest p equal to 0, I will get gamma 0 plus 1 into v at momentum p equal to 0, and then again let me assume that this v is nothing but phi prime chi prime. If I put that phi prime chi prime, again remember this is a 4×4 matrix, but in short I am writing 2×2. Now again, if you solve this equation, you will get phi prime equal to minus chi prime equal to eta. So now my v, the negative energy solution when the particle is at rest, is root m eta and minus eta. Right? Now let me pause here little bit. Let me discuss a few points. You know, the Dirac equations, when how have we got the Dirac equations? We have linearized the Hamiltonian is alpha dot p plus beta m, right? And in place of h equal to that, and in place of h, I have put the quantum mechanical prescription that it is I d dt, and p is the minus I times special gradient. That is how you got the equation. Now the same equation, so you, as if this is a quantum mechanical equations, right? But without using this quantum mechanics, you can derive the Dirac equations, as I mentioned yesterday, by using the properties of the spinors, the transformation properties of the spinors under Lorentz group. If you do that, you will get the Dirac equations. You don't have to use the quantum mechanical you know, prescription that energy is I d dt and momentum is minus I times special gradients. Okay, you don't have to do that. So without using the quantum mechanical equation, you can do that. That is a very interesting and mathematically very rich derivation. Time is short, so I am not doing it. But if some of you are interested, let me know. Okay, even one-to-one, I can tell you how to do it. Okay. So now, what we have done actually, we have got this Dirac solution of the Dirac equations when the particle is positive energy solution and negative energy solution when the particle is at rest. But generally particle will not be at rest. I mean, we should also know the solution when the particle is moving some momentum p. Now, you know, Lorentz transformation, you know, so suppose you know the let me give you an example here, that suppose you have a particle at rest, charged particle at rest. Then what you do, you can write down the potential, electrical potential phi is E square by r, or E square by 4 pi epsilon times r, right? And now suppose the particle is moving, the electron is moving. Then when the electron is moving, then what will you have? You will have the static potential phi, but also the vector potential A, right? That is right. Now what you can do, you can have the, you know, the Coulomb potential phi and the vector potential A, they also form a 4 vector A mu, where the temporal component is phi and the vector potential A is the special part of that A mu. Now if I know the temporal component of the 4 vector, and if I know the special component of the 4 vector, then I know how they will transform under Lorentz transformation. So what I can do then, if I know the potential for the particle when it is at rest, I can use the Lorentz transformation and calculate the potential for the moving particle by using simply the Lorentz transformation. And you know that potential which you call is the Lennard-Wiechert potential, right? There is elegant derivations for in this way which you can do. Right now, analogously, which I have got here, actually, I have got this spinor when the particle is at rest. Now, if I know how the spinor transforms under Lorentz transformation, then I will be able to, from this solution which is at rest, from that solution, I will be able to get the solution when the particle is moving, provided I know how this spinor is moving, how the spinor get transformed under Lorentz transformation. That's it. And that's a very elegant way to do things. And if you use that result, that I know the spinors when it is at rest, I want to know the solution when it is moving, you just apply the Lorentz transformation on the spinor. If you do that, you get these solutions. This derivation is again a bit lengthy. I am quoting here the result, but if I go for the derivations, it will take a complete 1 day. I can do that, but provided you agree, later I can do it one day. But within this schedule, if I have to finish it, then I am just assuming that particular expressions, that if I know the solution when the spinor is at rest, and if I know how the spinor transform under Lorentz boost, then I can calculate the solutions, right? And this is the solution which I get. I can give you, this is simply the solution which you get. So this is zeta s was the solution when it was at rest, that it just get multiplies by root over p dot sigma and p dot sigma bar. And this sigma and sigma bar I have defined. Sigma mu is 1 sigma and sigma bar mu is 1 minus sigma. So all the quantities I have defined really. If you want to learn, you have to go line by line through my notes, which I will provide to you. Okay. Now, similarly for Vs, the negative energy solution when the particle is at rest is eta minus eta. So this is when the particle is at rest. The spinor is at rest. If I know how the spinor transform on the Lorentz transformation, I'll get these solutions. But never mind, I have got the full solution for the Dirac equations. You see, I have got the full solution for the Dirac equations for you in Dirac-Pauli representations. But in the oil representations, what I am doing, I am using the solution. I am solving it when the spinor is at rest, 0 momentum, and then I am giving a boost to that solution to get the solution for non-zero momentum. But only thing I should know how the spinors transform under Lorentz transformation, under Lorentz boost. Okay. So this needs little bit of knowledge of Lorentz groove. Okay, but I am doing this because some of you may be interested and learn by yourself, or I can discuss it later. But for Dirac-Pauli, I have explicitly shown how to solve the Dirac equation. Okay. Now, some important relations which this U and V satisfies, that you have to know when you will be. This will be absolutely required when you will be evaluating the Feynman diagrams for the quantum electrodynamics. So one is this U, this U and V, these solutions I have got, right? Now this U and V I know, so from U I can calculate U dagger. Of course, there is no difficulty in that. And of course, I can calculate U dagger U. And this detailed algebra I have done here, line by line, you can see that US dagger US will be nothing but 2 times P0. P0 is the temporal component of the 4 momentum, which you can call the energy. So UR dagger US will be 2 times P0 delta RS, which is a Kronecker delta. This is important relations which we will be using later. The other important relations is UR bar US, where UR bar again is UR dagger times gamma 0. I have said that bar will be dagger, and if you multiply the dagger from right by gamma 0, you get the bar. That is the definition I have used. So UR dagger gamma 0 US. You know gamma 0, you know UR dagger, you know UR dagger here, right? And you know US. You just do the multiplications, and this algebra is very simple. You will be able to show that UR bar US is nothing but 2 times mass into Kronecker delta, delta RS. Okay, very simple. And this algebra is done line by line, so you don't have to worry at all. But these are very important results. I am repeatedly saying that you will need that when you will evaluate the Feynman diagram. The most important one is the spin sum. USP V U USP U bar SP. You know U, right? I have just written down the expression for you, right? You know US bar, which I can write US bar is U dagger gamma 0. So this is U dagger and this is the gamma 0. Just simply do nothing. You just go on multiplying the matrices, go ahead, and you will see that USP U bar SP is nothing but gamma P plus gamma dot P plus M. Sometimes it is written as gamma mu P mu plus M. Similar exercise you can do for V. You will get VSP V bar USP will be gamma dot P minus M. And I am telling you, these two expressions you will be requiring in evaluating the Feynman propagators for the Dirac fields, and also when you will be calculating the Dirac sum for the spin sum for calculating the cross sections of some process where electrons are involved. This will be required. So this is the algebra. I am just quoting it here because you will need it in future. Okay. Now now we will slowly go towards the quantization of the Dirac field. Okay, but before that I'll just tell you two more things. One is the Lagrangian density. This is the Lagrangian density for the Dirac field which I have used, and this psi and psi bar I have already defined. Psi bar was nothing but psi dagger gamma 0. So psi bar is, so this psi bar psi is nothing but psi dagger gamma 0 psi. Okay, this psi bar psi transforms like a scalar under Lorentz transformation, not psi dagger psi. I told you that why I am interested in psi bar, I'll tell you later, and this is the reason. Because psi dagger psi is not a scalar under Lorentz transformation, but psi bar psi is a scalar under Lorentz transformation. So when I will be trying to construct any interactions involving scalar, then I should use psi bar psi, not psi dagger psi. Okay, psi bar gamma mu psi, this transforms like a vector transform under Lorentz transformation. Psi bar gamma 5 psi transform like a pseudo scalar, right? So by pseudo scalar we mean that this transform like a scalar, but there will be change in parity. Psi bar gamma mu gamma 5 psi is missing here. I will put it. It will behave like a pseudo vector, like angular momentum, which is a pseudo vector, which is R cross P, right? So this psi bar gamma mu gamma 5 will transform like a pseudo vector under Lorentz transformation. And the current is a vector which I have already, this current I have calculated, J mu equal to psi bar gamma mu psi, and you can show that del mu J mu, you can just take the derivative del mu psi bar gamma mu plus psi bar gamma mu del mu psi. Now you know the Dirac equation for psi bar and psi. Now you know this del mu psi bar gamma mu, which is coming here also coming del mu psi bar gamma mu. So you can use the Dirac equation, del mu psi bar gamma mu will be called I m psi bar. You just put there I m psi bar, and then you have also del mu psi gamma mu del mu psi. Again from the Dirac equation you can take gamma mu del mu psi, which will be minus I m psi. You put it here, you will see del mu J mu will be equal to identically 0. That means the vector current psi bar gamma mu psi is conserved, which is just reconfirming our result which we have got little earlier. Okay. Now there is another important quantity which is called pseudo current, which is defined pseudo vector current, which is J mu 5. Notation is J mu 5. Psi bar gamma mu gamma 5 psi. This 5 is because of this gamma 5. Now you see, now suppose I take the del mu on both sides, you will have del mu psi bar gamma 5 psi, which is equal to del mu psi bar into gamma 5 psi, and again psi bar gamma 5 del mu psi. Now again you can use the Dirac equation to replace del mu psi bar gamma mu from the Dirac equation satisfied by psi bar, and you can write again gamma mu and gamma 5 they anti-commute. So what you can do, you can just write this as psi bar minus psi bar gamma 5 gamma mu del mu psi. So gamma mu del mu psi, again you can replace from Dirac equation. You will see that del mu j mu 5 ultimately will become 2 times I m psi bar gamma 5 psi. See the interesting thing. The j mu, the vector current, I said psi bar gamma mu psi is a vector. So this is a vector current. So this vector current psi bar gamma mu psi is conserved. But the pseudo vector current psi bar gamma 5 psi is not conserved if the mass is non-zero. If the mass is 0, then del mu j mu 5 will also be 0. So for massless particle, this pseudo vector current, or it is more commonly called axial current, will also be conserved. So axial current will be conserved if mass is 0, but if mass is not 0, then axial current will not be conserved. Now again, let me make a comment here. We have discussed this Noether's theorem, where you have mentioned very clearly that you have the Lagrangian, right? You have the Lagrangian where this you have the Lagrangian. So suppose I change this psi like e to the I alpha psi, right? Here I have changed the psi to e to the I alpha psi, and psi bar will be similarly e to the minus I alpha psi bar. Okay, if I make that change, and because of that change, if my L remains invariant or action remains invariant, then I will get a conserved current, and that conserved current is J mu, which is J mu equal to psi bar gamma mu psi. Okay, this is very important. So what I am trying to tell you is that always this going through the approach of Noether's theorem, you have a very the Noether theorem is very general. So you have learned something which is very elegant and very general. So for the conservation laws, it always, you please try to understand from the Noether's theorem point of view, right? Now, so if I try to e to the I alpha psi, then I get a conserved current which is psi bar gamma mu psi, Noether current. You will automatically get that. So what you do, you just change this L, you calculate the change in L, because you have changed psi to e to the I alpha psi, and that change in delta L, you put it to 0. That will force you to get this del mu j mu equal to 0, where j mu equal to this. So this gives a direct connections between the symmetry and the conservation law. Similarly, if I change psi to e to the I alpha gamma 5 psi, right? I change my psi to e to the I alpha gamma 5 psi, right? Similarly, I will make a change to psi bar. So if I change here the psi to e to the I alpha gamma 5 psi, and correspondingly the change in psi bar, and calculate this delta L, the change in the Lagrangian, I will get this current, but this current will not be conserved unless this mass term is 0 here. This current will not be conserved, right? Now you remember that I said some time ago that when the mass is 0, then gamma psi and gamma 5 psi both satisfies the Dirac equations. So we'll see later what is the role played by this gamma 5 little later. Now so this is a very powerful Noether's theorem is, of course, is one of the most powerful theorem in physics, that it connects the symmetry with the conservation laws. Now as I said that if you make this psi like change psi like this, and if you find del equal to 0, then you have a conserved current. If you change psi as e to the I alpha gamma 5 psi, and if you will see the delta L will be 0, you will get a conserved current provided mass is 0, right? Then you will get this. Now you see this from these two current J mu psi bar gamma mu psi and J mu 5 psi bar gamma mu gamma 5 psi, I can construct from them two left and right handed current psi bar gamma mu 1 minus gamma 5 by 2 psi and psi mu r psi bar gamma mu 1 plus gamma 5 psi r. Just a simple combination of these two currents. Okay. Now you see what I have said little ago, that 1 minus gamma 5 by 2 into psi is a psi L. It is left-handed spinor, and 1 plus gamma 5 by 2 psi was psi r, right? That was a right-handed spinor, right? So if the mass is 0, if the mass is 0, then you will see the left-handed and right-handed current will be separately conserved. Let me tell you, I mean, the problem here is that I am giving the lecture online, not we are not physically present. Otherwise I could have drawn a diagram in the board and shown you more explicitly. But just imagine one thing. So suppose you have a massless particle. So let me just first define what is what we call by helicity or the chirality, let us say. So a particle will be called a, let us say, right-handed particle if it has a spin and momentum in the same direction. Please just think, we have a particle and its spin and the momentum is in the same direction. That is a right-handed particle. And if its momentum is opposite to the spin, then we will call it a left-handed particle. Okay. Now suppose you have a massive particle. You have a particle which has a mass. By definition, if you have a particle which has a mass, then the particle will certainly will move with a velocity which is less than c. It cannot move with a velocity which is equal to c. Okay. So a massive particle with move with a velocity. Suppose you have a massive particle which is moving with a velocity v, and v must be certainly less than c, the velocity of light in vacuum. Now a particle, right-handed particle, that means its spin and momentum is in the same direction, is moving with velocity v with respect to you. You are standing in the laboratory. So with respect to you, it is a right-handed particle because its spin and momentum in the same direction when you are standing on the laboratory. Now suppose you now observe the same particle from a frame. You sit on a frame which is moving with a velocity c. What will you see? You will see the particle is moving opposite to its initial direction, right? Is it convincing, right? So when you observe the particle, right-handed particle which has a spin and momentum in the same direction, right, which is moving with a velocity v. Now you want to observe the particle from a frame of reference which is moving with a velocity c in the same direction. So from your frame, you will not now see the particle is moving in the opposite direction. That means momentum direction is reversed. So from that frame, from your moving frame now, the particle is now left-handed, right? Because its spin is in the same direction, but momentum is opposite, velocity is opposite. So it is a right-handed particle is now appearing as a left-handed particle. So the particle has changed its handedness. Why it has changed its handedness? Because it has a mass, right? Because it has a velocity which is less than the velocity v. Why I am saying that? Now you consider the massless particle which is right-handed. So its spin and momentum is in the same direction. It is moving with the velocity c. Now you are standing in the laboratory. Now, when you see the same particle, same particle from a frame which is moving with velocity c, it will not change its direction, because the velocity will always remain c, right? So, and it will not change its direction then, right? So, a massless particle, if it is right-handed, it will remain right-handed from whichever frame you see. So, handedness will not change. In that sense, we will say handedness is a conserved quantity, and that is in a more scientific language called chirality. Chirality is conserved for massless particle, right? But chirality will not be conserved for a massive particle, because it will have a velocity v which is less than c, and that if it has a velocity v which is less than c, which is right-handed from a lab frame, it may look left-handed because of its reversal of its momentum direction when I observe it from a frame which is moving with velocity c. So mass term actually breaks the handedness, breaks the chirality. So that is a very important concept. I could have explained it much better in a blackboard, but unfortunately that is not the case. But I hope you have understood. But if you have not, then please let me know. I'll try to explain. Okay. So maybe this is a good point here to stop. Next day I will start quantizing the Dirac field. Okay, because quantization, starting quantization today will not be a good idea, because I have only few minutes left.
Okay, sir. There is a question from Biplop Paik. Biplop Paik, can you put forward your question now?
Yeah. So please let me know if you have any question. I don't know. This concept is very useful, and it will come. I mean, next day what I am going to. What is happening here? Just maybe I have. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah. So what I have in mind is that next day I will discuss some more symmetries of the Dirac equations, which will be very useful if you work in especially in weak interactions in Newtonian physics, and also in QED or in QCD. Some of the symmetries of the Dirac equations, I'll discrete symmetries of the Dirac equations, and then I'll quantize the Dirac equations and Maxwell equations. And once we do that, we'll be able to draw the diagrams. And I tell you, I'm just preparing you for the calculations for the Feynman diagrams. This algebra will be very much required. That is why I am doing it in detail. Otherwise, I think I could have avoided a few calculations. But this conception of chirality is very important. Most of the time, it's not clear to students. So if you have any question, let me know. Is it clear, the chirality part? If not, let me know.
Okay, so Biplop Paik, participants. Biplop Paik has asked a question, sir, in the chat box. He is asking, sir, what would be the special significance of using PD representation over will? Is there any? There is a question.
What would be the special significance of using Pauli-Dirac representation over will? Is there any? Actually not. I mean, you can use both.
Biplop Paik has
so what I will
comment.
Yeah.
Third from last.
So what I am going to do, actually, this good that you have reminded me. And next day I will there is something called Dirac fermion, and there is also something called Majorana fermion. I'll discuss that little bit. Majorana fermion, which will make clear which representations you will use where. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir.
This Majorana,
Is there any other question from the participants?
please let me know if you have any problem. Like yesterday, somebody said that yeah, so that's important that you tell me whether.
Ashadullah, is it okay now? Ashadullah Sheikh, can you hear me?
So when you calculate this, you know, this I mean, this to some of you it may appear like a little more bit algebraic, but it is required. I am telling you, good physics will come once you do the mathematics part. Okay.
Yes, sir. I am Asadullah, sir.
Tell me if you have any problem.
So is
Sir,
it,
it was okay, but I think I have to go through all these things, sir.
Sure. Okay.
Still, I am not very comfortable in these things.
Okay. So you
But sir, I have some other question, very basic question maybe. Sir, when we do the infinite square well in quantum mechanics, we consider one bound state and another non-bound state. And in bound state, we consider E is, that means total energy E is negative. But sir, when we draw the diagram, we actually take some potential, maybe some negative potential energy, and both side minus A and plus A, outside minus A and plus A, the potential is 0. But when we consider total energy is negative, but in actually
in this,
what we understand, so total
in
energy
the square wheel, if I remember correctly, the energy expression goes as n square pi square by a square with some constant, of course.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
now
my question is, sir, when we consider that total energy is negative, that means potential energy has to be the magnitude of the potential energy has to be more than the kinetic energy. Otherwise, total energy, that means kinetic energy plus potential energy, how it is less than 0, means I think if it is particle is not in some potential negative potential energy, it cannot have negative energy. Total energy cannot be negative. But outside,
there are two things. You see, the question is what you call it a bound state. Let us say let us compare the more familiar example, like let us say, of course, square wheel is also very familiar. Say hydrogen atom. The hydrogen atom, all the energy eigenvalues are negative, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. But the harmonic oscillator, which is also a bound state, but the energy eigenvalues are all positive.
Yes, sir.
N plus half h bar omega, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
now,
sir.
In terms of the, you have asked a very interesting question. Now, let me tell you one interesting thing. Suppose you have a square wheel, right, of length A.
Yes, sir.
Of size A, let us say.
Yes, sir.
Now, suppose I go on decreasing the size of your square wheel A.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, sir. It will be.
Question which is very relevant to quantum field theory is that how long your ordinary quantum mechanics will be valid.
Yes,
if I go on decreasing the A, which is in the denominator, you see the energy will increase, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I am decreasing the size of the square wheel, energy is increasing. When you have enough energy in the wheel itself, there will be creation of particles and antiparticles, because Einstein told us that m is E by c square.
Yes.
And the point when that will happen, your whole quantum mechanics will break down. And from that point onwards, you have to use the quantum field theory, which we are discussing now. Now, the interesting thing is that, when the length of that square wheel will become equal to the Compton wavelength of that particle, your quantum mechanics will break down. Like when the characteristics length of a system becomes of the order of de Broglie wavelength, your classical mechanics breaks down.
Yes, sir.
You have to use the quantum mechanics. Now, when the characteristics length scale in your system will become of the order of Compton wavelength, then your quantum mechanics will also break down. And from that point onwards, you have to use the quantum field theory, right? Because when it becomes equal to the, or of the order of the Compton wavelength, you will have a lot of creation of particles and antiparticles in your well. Now you have started your Schrodinger equations with a single particle. Now you have many particles, which you will not be able to handle within the Schrodinger equation. So that's a very important question, and that's where the quantum mechanics itself breaks down.
Yes, sir. So, sir, here what we call bound state, we have to understand in some different way.
Bound state, when you call a bound state, you should not consider this as a whether energy eigenvalues is positive or negative, because I gave you the example of harmonic oscillator, right? You should see how the wave function behaves. That will tell you. That will tell you whether
if the wave function is bound, it is limited in certain region.
That's
then
right.
we call it bound state.
That's
yes, sir.
right.
I understood it, sir. Thank you, sir.
So that is true for both, you see, harmonic oscillator and the hydrogen atom. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's how it should think. So wave function will give you the right picture for the bound state. Okay.
Yes, sir. So, sir, in classical mechanics, it is actually bound state means total energy is negative always, but here it is not same thing. Yes, sir. I understood, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other question? But you me the feedback so that this will help me. I'll improve the conversation between you and me. Okay. Okay, please. Any other question? Yeah.
If there is no more question, is there any other question from participant? Please put forward.
Sir, I have one more question. Maybe this is also very silly question or trivial question. I will ask this. Sir, when we solve some differential equation of many variables, more than one variables, many times we solve by actually separation of variables. And when we start with considering that this problem, this equation has some separable variable, that means we already restricted the solutions, because we are considering that the solutions are actually separable. So we are actually, maybe we are eliminating some solutions that are not separable. So when we consider at the beginning of applying any physics or applying any mathematical argument, we just consider that it has separable solutions and we start solving it. And finally, when we solve it, we get some solutions. And particularly in quantum mechanics, I see that they declare that all the summation of all the solutions is the most general solutions, and there are no other possible solutions. And it seems to me that we have already implied some restrictions before solving the equation. So maybe these solutions are not actually missing some solutions. It seems even in other problems also I see.
No, you see, when you are discussing about the physics and physical problems, if I give you a differential equations and I tell you solve it, doesn't mean anything. You see, if I give you a differential equation and tell you that you please solve it, it doesn't mean anything, because any differential equations may have infinite number of solutions. So let us say del square y del x square equal to 0. You can have infinite number of solutions, right? Because y equal to 1, 2, all will be solutions. But solutions will be meaningful when you tell the proper initial and boundary conditions. So the complete statement of the complete problem should be: you are given a differential equations and given initial and boundary condition. Now you solve it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But here my question is, sir, when we actually start solving Schrodinger equation, at the beginning, we from the very beginning, we have started with separable solutions. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
but
And
that finds, because what happens, that is what I am saying.
yes,
When
sir.
you are solving any quantum mechanical problem or any problem in electrodynamics or anywhere in differential equations, you are not only given the equation, you are also given the initial conditions and the boundary conditions.
Okay, sir. So those conditions actually
Absolutely.
allowing me to consider that there
Right. So
is only separable solutions.
that's
Yes, sir.
without that, just given a differential equation and ask you to solve it is not meaningful. So
Oh,
you should be given so the statement of the problem will be complete when you are given a differential equations and given the initial and the boundary conditions. Okay.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in sir exams, normally many problems with many
Now you
yes,
please now what you should do actually, Ashadullah,
yes,
that
sir.
you should come out from the examination phase
Yes,
and give
sir.
more stress on learning and thinking and investigating. Okay, so that
Yes, sir.
should be, I mean,
Yes, sir.
that
Thank you,
that
sir.
should be the yeah. So learning with you should enjoy learning.
Yes,
That
sir.
will help you to continue also. Okay,
Yes, sir.
to learn. Unless you enjoy, you will not continue. That's the problem.
Yes, sir.
As I said, that you should always think that we all are very lucky to be in physics, because if not anything else, we are the successor of Albert Einstein. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We are lucky. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, here I am studying actually Griffith's textbook, Introduction to Quantum
No,
Mechanics.
what you should do actually, since you are in a MSc or probably you are in a PhD, so
Yes, sir.
you should Griffith book is very good, but you should write. I mean Jackson. Jackson, sometimes the students complains that it is too mathematical or bit complex. So
Yes,
please, I am telling you a book which I teach electrodynamics in our doctoral course.
yes,
Okay,
sir.
this year at least I am doing that.
Yes, sir.
So there is a beautiful book by Jangwil, Zangwil.
Yes, sir. I will note it. Yes, sir.
That's a beautiful book. Okay,
Okay, sir.
I have hardly seen such a good book. Yeah, it is Cambridge University Press. Excellent book, Jangwil.
Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
have this book.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. And if it is online class this year in our doctoral course, you can join. I am teaching this year.
Okay, sir.
Fine.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
So if there is no more question, then I should say thank Professor Alom for his nice lecture, and we will meet on 13th February at the same time, 7:30 p.m. And those who are new, please share your email or WhatsApp so that we can contact in the future course of action.
And
You may.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, yes. Initially, few five to six participants phone me that that there is no link with them. So the new participant should send your email to us so that we can send you the all the links.
Sure. And tomorrow I will send you all these two lectures note. I will send you tomorrow. Okay. I have to just I found one correction I have to do. Otherwise, I could have sent you right now. But there is one printing mistake. Just one typo. One shy bar is missing somewhere. I'll correct and send you.
Okay, Dr. Khan, you complete it.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night to all of you.
We'll meet on 13th. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night to all.
Good night. Good night to all of you.
হ্যাঁ খান,
হ্যাঁ বলো।
হ্যাঁ ওই রেকর্ডিংটা
আচ্ছা, ওই আমি ওদের পাচ্ছিলাম না, রেকর্ডিংটা মার সঙ্গে জিজ্ঞেস করতে হবে।
স্যার রেকর্ডিংটা অফ করে দিচ্ছি।
হ্যাঁ রেকর্ডিং অফ
করে দাও।